What up, player profiler faithful? It's Matty Kiwoom. Welcome to another episode of The Game Plan. First things first, please subscribe to the Player Profiler YouTube channel if you're not already. Smash that like button on this video, and please leave a comment about how great this episode is. Today, we are diving into one of my favorite topics. My guests and I will be talking big picture dynasty theory. Cannot wait for this. So, gang, get out your pen and your pad and let's start game planning to take our dynasty prowess to the next level. Planners, today I am joined by an incredibly, and I mean very special guest. He is the host of the People's Dynasty podcast. Of course, I am talking about one of the hottest new shows on the Player Profiler Network, the Dynasty Warzone. Gang, say what's up to Randall Memphis Young. What is up, Memphis?
Hey, man. I feel like this is my pro wrestling entrance. Like I come in, I should have a steel chair, maybe hit someone over the head. I'm excited. You know, this has been one of the coolest parts about bringing the Dynasty Warzone over to Player Profiler is meeting all kinds of cool new people like yourself, like so many others. And when you reached out and said, hey, you want to jump on the game plan? I'm like, you're damn right I want to jump on the game plan because you know, that's the one commonality, whether you're into redraft, best ball, dynasty, whatever, the common thread that runs through the Player Profiler content creators is we all love football in some form or fashion. So whenever I get a chance to jump on and talk ball, I'm going to talk ball.
And we got a chance to work together when we did a big mock draft on the GOAT district a couple months, maybe a month or so ago. So that's where we were going to be able to link up. And that all happens because now we're all collaborating together at the Play Profile YouTube channel and getting things going on this network. So we love having the Dynasty Warzone. You guys are awesome. It's a great show. The topics you guys bring up, and I'm super excited for today's topic. We're talking Dynasty theory. If you want to be a part of that, which I highly recommend you do, stick around and we're going to talk Dynasty theory. But before we do, we got to hear from the Podfather as he talks a little bit about FFPC.
You know, people always ask me, hey, what is the World Series of fantasy or the Super Bowl of fantasy football? And it's easy. It's the FFPC, the Fantasy Football Players Championship. It's a $6 million prize pool. And they've had their Never Too Early Best Ball leagues cranking since February. So the FFPC is the answer to so many questions. Hey, where's the best place to get a Dynasty Orphan? Well, you can adopt a Dynasty Orphan at the FFPC. That's why we partner with them. If you want to play fantasy football for low, medium, high stakes, seasonal, best ball, dynasty, go to the FFPC. And don't forget, promo code Underworld to get you $25 off your first team. $25 off your first team, no matter what team it is, no matter what format it is, at the FFPC. Go do it.
Hey, real quick, may I add something real quick to that?
Of course.
So we have a lot of people that are going to see the title, they're going to jump in for Dynasty. And Dynasty is a growing format. You hear Matt Barry talk more about it. You hear the fantasy footballers talk more about it. Those are some of the high-level people in the industry. What the FFPC does is if you like, man, I've played redraft for 10 years and I really want to go play some Dynasty, but I don't have 11 friends or 11 people that I trust that would keep a league going. The best part about the FFPC that's not in that commercial is that they've never had a league fold. So if you want to play Dynasty, you can pick your stakes. They've never had a league fold. So if you invest in a startup, you buy an orphan, no matter what, that league's going to be there in a year, in 2 years. So if you're doing a productive struggle, if you're trying to fix up an orphan for long-term dominance, the FFPC is a great choice.
Oh, what a great nugget to add. Because I would imagine that if you're new to Dynasty, the concept of your league folding after a year kind of negates all the fun that goes into Dynasty. If you're doing a productive struggle, if you're doing a full-on teardown, you need more than 1 year to do it. So that's a good point. So get over to FFPC, get into one of these leagues, and you will have a chance to get better and better at Dynasty football. And if you tune into the game plan of Dynasty Warzone, maybe you'll bring home some hardware. Memphis, before we get into Dynasty Theory, I got to surprise you with a couple of questions. I always ask my guests with some stuff off of the show sheet, off the cuff. But here's question number one, and then here's the follow-up. How long have you been playing fantasy football, and how would you describe your fantasy management style?
Well, I don't know what year I actually started, but the year that I started and learned a hard lesson was you don't draft during the early in the NFL preseason, because the first year I played serious Dynasty was the year Michael Vick broke his leg in training camp, and he missed like the first third or half of the season, and he was like my number one overall pick that year. It was when he was with Atlanta, so 22 years ago. So it's been a long time. Started playing with my uncle and some of his friends, and I thought I was playing Dynasty. As I've educated myself and learned more, it was really just a glorified keeper league. We kept one quarterback, one running back, one wide receiver, and then we drafted around that. So it was keeper, transition to Dynasty down the road. My management style, it depends on the roster. It depends on the move, and that's something we're going to talk about today as we jump in. I don't have a style. You have to adjust your style to the league you're in, to the league mates you're in. That's the one disadvantage of like doing a startup like with people you've never met, whether it's the FFPC or 11 strangers you met on the internet. It's you got to learn their style, but ultimately, no matter where you're playing, you got to have a plan. And I don't ever walk into anything without a plan. And sometimes the plan gets derailed and you have to make some adjustments on the fly. But I'm a medium level aggressive guy. Like I tend to do the opposite of what my league mates do.
Yeah.
So if my league mates are aggressive, I'm going to be a little bit more conservative. If my league mates are, it's kind of like the way I play poker. If the table's conservative, I'm going to be a little bit more aggressive. You can't do what everybody else does and expect to have a winning result. So I modify it based off the group I'm with.
I love hearing that. The zigging when others are zagging. It's a way to get advantage. Sometimes it doesn't always work out, I'm assuming. But at the time, when it does work out, it works out in spades because everyone's going one way, you're going another, and kind of throw them a little monkey wrench there in the works. It's funny. I ask this question to everybody, right? And the consistent through line, whether it's exact wording or different wording, it's flexibility and understanding your league settings, your league mates, the tendencies, whether they draft, trade, whether they hoard picks, all of that stuff always comes out in that. And that's why the game plan is so special, because we're getting these really brilliant fantasy minds on to talk about what they do in these leagues. And you're noticing each and every week, you got to be flexible and you got to know your league. So thank you for sharing. And I'm excited to dive into today's topic because it's a little big picture stuff here. We're going to be talking about Dynasty Theory. So I'm going to start us off with a question, Memphis, if that's okay. You can take the reins here and I'll pop in and ask some questions. And we're going to have a really good conversation about Dynasty Theory. So how do you define Dynasty Theory?
Well, for me, I've modified this, and I've always wanted to do this show. So that when you asked me what I wanted to do, I was like, cool. I'm excited that you ask. I know there's a show out there called Dynasty Theory, but for me, the fundamental theory of Dynasty Poker, and I've actually written this out, and I shared it with you in the show sheet, but it's the art of drafting, trading for, trading away, or waiver wire acquiring every player as if you know exactly how his career arc will go without the presence of injuries. Every decision that is made in Dynasty Fantasy Football can be made in the terms of expected value on the payoff of each transaction and how it relates to the current goals of the Dynasty roster. So again, nobody knows for sure, right? If I knew the outcome of every player's career, I would just dominate DFS and live on an island in the Caribbean with a good Wi-Fi connection. But I don't. but I've done my work, and I understand. Hey, this is how I see this person's career arc going based off their athleticism, where they landed, their coaches, the players around them, whatever that is. And I only know what I know, and then I trade those guys away based on what I foresee happening. It's not much different. I mean, I'm not Warren Buffett. I'm not like a big finance guy, but I kind of operate that way. And I'm trying to, get in when the price is good, get out when the price is bad. And then I have to know where I'm at. I'm a little bit older in life. So my financial goals for my wife, my family, and I may not be the same as a younger person. A younger person with more years in the job market may want to be more aggressive with their retirement and their investing because they're trying to build it up. Whereas with me being a little bit older, my wife and I, we tend to be a little bit more conservative. So you have to know what the goals of your team are in order to make those moves. So just having an understanding, man, I think that's so often what just gets dynasty GMs in trouble. And I'm seeing it right now in rookie drafts. They're just trading for the sake of trading. Or the biggest fallacy, especially in dynasty, because it's not the same as the real NFL. You've got to carry 53 players. You've got to have 22 starters. And in most cases, you've got to have sub packages. You got to go nickel. You got to go dime. You got to go 3 wide. You got to go 2 tight end. So it's even different in the real NFL. Guys, we're starting 8, 9, 10, 11 players. You have needs, and this draft best player available doesn't always work. It's like I was in a draft yesterday. I really needed a quarterback. I didn't need a running back. I was at the 105. And do you know who's been the 105 in just about every rookie Superflex draft I've been in?
Probably one of the receivers or Gibbs.
It was Gibbs. That was exactly right. If I had to rank this roster's wide receiver group, I'd give it a B.
Okay.
I would give this running back group an A. I mean, I've got Najee, Breece Hall, and one other young stud on this team. But my quarterbacks are Joe Burrow, who's very good, Mac Jones, who's speculative, and who was the third guy? Oh, Carson Wentz. Don't tell anybody. But so I made a move.
Maybe it goes to the Cardinals.
I made very possible. I made a move. I was like, how can I get to number 2? And the guy gave me a really good deal at number 2. It cost me a little bit to move up because he was loaded at quarterback. And I drafted based off the needs of that team. And it's great that's what we're seeing a lot of right now. Hey, he's a good player and he's a good player. And they're right. You're 100% right. But a lot of guys can walk into Lowe's and say, that's a good 2x4.
Right.
That's a good pipe fitting. But the real builder, the real contractor can take all those parts and build a home. And that's what I'm trying to do. So I went and got the quarterback that my roster needed.
Yep.
That's the thing is don't always just quote unquote identify talent. Identify what your roster needs, that roster needs, and do your best to get the best player available that helps you win. I don't buy a lot of this. You don't have to set a roster in May. I promise you, if you're in a league with me and I know that you're severely limited in an area, I'm going to make sure not only that I know that everyone else in that league knows that, and to make sure they charge you a buttload to get out of it. I'm that guy.
That's fun. And you brought up a couple minutes ago the kind of the evolution to in the comparisons between the finance world and dynasty. As dynasty gains in popularity, the terms, assets, portfolios, diversifying, all of these terms continue to accumulate because you do see that correlation, that kind of relationship between the stock market and fantasy football. You're trying to get in when you can at a low price and try to get out when it's high before it dips down. And it's kind of the same premise. So I'm glad you bring that up. But you're also talking about evaluating your team, setting goals. Is there a particular time of year that dynasty gamers should sit down with themselves, have the fake proverbial board meeting for your franchise and truly kind of define it? Should that happen right after the Super Bowl? Should that happen in June? Should that happen right before your rookie draft? When should dynasty gamers sit down and have that long talk with themselves of, is this team good? Is this team suck?
Well, I'm going to answer this question with a question because it should be done twice a year. Now, we're both aspiring professional. This is our main source of income, content creators, but we're not there yet, right?
No, we're working. We're grinding.
You have a day job, right?
I do. Yes, correct.
And I would assume that once a year you get an annual performance review, and once a year you get a midterm performance review. Hey, we're going to set goals. So like coming out of the off season, like before the NFL goes to free agency in March, usually around St. Patrick's Day. You should be saying to yourself, hey, you know what are my goals for this team? Whether you have one, like some people, or 25, like lunatics like me, like you got to go through there and you got to say, hey, what is this team's goals for this year? and then you start, taking some notes. And then you have to attack those goals going into free agency because the NFL is going to NFL free agency is going to shake up the value of your roster.
Right.
Then you got to get through the NFL draft. Like a month ago, our buddy Theo, he loved Tyler Algier. And then they drafted a guy named Bijan Robinson. And
who he loves
Theo,
even more.
Yeah.
Theo
true.
loves himself some Bijan Robinson.
He does indeed. But then the NFL said, not so fast, my friends. Yeah. That's where you take those goals you wrote down in February and you look at them like right now going into your rookie drafts. And you got to say, okay, hey, you know what? Are we still on track? Did the NFL draft hurt me? Did free agency hurt me? Right. Tony Pollard came out of the NFL free agency period and the draft a big winner. If you had Pollard and you were counting on Pollard to be a producer, awesome. So you got to do it then, and then you got to do it along the way. Because even the best laid plans, and what we do with fantasy, injuries could, take you from a contender to a non-contender. Or a good rookie draft could take you from hey, I'm a year away to all of a sudden you're contending. You've got to make those things along the way. But most importantly, you got to give yourself at the end of the season, before you write those goals, you got to give yourself that seasonal performance review. Hey, how do we do against our goals? And then give all your players, especially not all of them, because, if I thought you were given, I don't know, like Zeke Elliott a performance review, I'd feel really sad. But give like your key guys like a performance review. Did Justin Jefferson, Garrett Wilson, whoever, did they perform?
Right.
And if they did, treat it like work. Hey, you know what? This guy was performing. He overperformed my expectation. I'm gonna go out and get some more of him because I don't know anyone else sees it. Or I know we like DeAndre Swift. I know we like Trey Lance, but their performance review is not good right now. If I, as a manager, that's what I do. I'm boring ass middle manager. If I was writing their performance reviews, I'd be like, we're below expectations here. And if you have a player on your roster that still holds value and is below your expectations, go give them to someone else with lower expectations and get something else. So I treat it like I would run a business. Those are some of the business things that I do that I don't think others are doing yet, and I hope more people do.
Yeah, we're definitely going to talk a little bit more about that. Just kind of you can incorporate the real life business things. And this is why I was so excited to talk to you today. And now just hearing it all kind of play out, it's getting me even more excited because I am of the mind, I don't always look at my teams like a bunch of numbers, a bunch of players. I look at it like I try to pretend like I am the head football operations manager for the New England Patriots, the general manager of the Kansas City Chiefs. I like to pretend like I'm the guy in charge building a team, and this is my franchise. I do find it tough to maintain that type of momentum for a lot of teams as I get in more and more dynasty leagues. Do you play in a bunch of dynasty leagues, or do you play in a select few?
I do. I have a couple that are like industry-based leagues that will always be near and dear to my heart, and you can tell they're industry leagues because they're still hosted on MFL. But then we have an amazing patron over at the Dynasty Warzone. It's over at Patreon/Dynasty Warzone. And I think we're up to like 15 or 16 leagues. And I'm in just about every one of those, or my co-host Jerry Sinclair is in those. And those are becoming more of my favorites. Those are our premium, people who take great care of us, our patrons. So those are the leagues. And I got to remind them who the man is. You got that. So for those not watching on YouTube, first of all, shame on you. You should be subscribed everywhere. Over Matty's shoulder is a WWE belt for Maniac Mox or whatever these guys do. But you got to remind them who the champ is. You got to walk in there with that belt over your shoulder. You got to remind them, who that person is. But yeah, you're always going to have 4 or 5 or 6 leagues that are really important. But just again, have a plan. Hey, you know what? So I'm going to do in January. I'm going to do because coming out of the season, everybody's fried. Just want to sit down, maybe do a little DFS, maybe a little gambling on like game day. But for the most part, your brain is fantasy mush, and you just need a hard reset. Cool, cool. But then start saying, all right, I'm in 10 leagues between now and February. I'm going to look over 3 teams an evening because you're going to be on your phone anyway. If you say you're not, you're probably lying.
You're definitely lying.
Throw something on the TV in the background. For me, it's like right now, it's college baseball. This is a true story of my life. I throw on college baseball in the background, and I'm going through my teams, and I'm going through my teams because the noise and the whatever the TV is keeping whatever I need to to
Keeping
stay
their
whole.
dialed in.
But I'm flipping through and going, okay, I can move him, and this team's not a contender, and I finished 7 and 8, and you just go through and do it. And here's the thing: it's not really part of what we're talking about. If there's a league that does not bring you joy, January is a great time. Is a great time to pull the ripcord. The season's over.
Yes.
Send
Yes.
the commissioner a DM and say, listen, brother, I love you, or sister, I love you. It's been a great run, but I am going to bow out. I want to give you plenty of time between now and the rookie draft to find a new GM. But yeah, man, you got to go through. You got to go through your rosters, and you got to make sure they're really focused on what your upcoming goals are. And they got to bring you joy, guys. This is supposed to be a hobby, something that's an escape from real life. It shouldn't bring stress to your heart.
No, it's got to be fun. And part of Dynasty theory is having fun with it. It's about having, we've talked about now, pretending that we're the GM, using real life applications to evaluate our fantasy teams, which is a proxy of a different sport. It's a fake stuff. It's all a fugazi, but we love it. We're having fun with it. And if you're not, get out of the league and give your league enough time. They won't look at you any different. You just get on out. Even in my long running home league, we've been playing now for 12 years. And I tell guys who are thinking about leaving, I'm like, listen, you can still come to draft day. You can still come to the meetups when we have a bunch of guys go watch the games in week 8. You don't have to be part of the league. You are part of this brotherhood that started this league. So you'll always be a part of it. And if your life takes you in a different angle where you can't play because I'm a psycho, there's other psychos in the league that I'm playing like crazy, you could bounce out. So that's another part of Dynasty theory that I think is not talked about enough. Have fun with it. If you're not having fun, all of this stuff that we're talking about, all this nuanced topics, all of these tools that you're bringing into your Dynasty tool belt, they're going to be irrelevant because you're just going to be miserable. No one likes showing up to a miserable job. That's why they say, what's the saying? If you do something you love, you never work a day in your life. So if you love fantasy, it should never feel like work. And we are now in the part of Dynasty, which it's the most hectic. Trade seasons are turned back on. Rookie drafts, all this stuff is mayhem. So, do you have any personal secrets or anything you'd like to share when it comes to player acquisitions in general, whether it be rookie draft, trades, free agent, all that good stuff this time of the year? It's so busy.
Well, I got 3, and we'll start with one for a contender.
Okay.
Is don't be afraid to move next year's picks. If you're a contender in 2023, where should your 24 first be?
At the end.
Toward the back end.
Yeah.
Are those going to be valuable 24 picks, or are they going to be less than valuable?
Your league mates will tell you they're worth shite. That's what they'll tell you.
They're going to say, I'm going to value this at the 106. Good for you, buddy. You go right ahead. You value it however you want.
How many times I've heard, do you want this 111? That's basically a second round pick. No, sir, it's a late first, but your league mates will tell you it's a second.
And you can always spin that. Nope. You know what? A future first should always be considered the 106 because we don't know how this is going to go.
Yep.
And I recently did this. This is a team where I won the championship last year. This is probably based off the roster I have. It's last year of real contention. I've got Stephon Diggs. I've got Cooper Kupp. I made a move, so I'm very fortunate. I've got Garrett Wilson and Brandon Ayuk. So I've got some young guys coming behind him. I lost Tom Brady. I got lucky and made a trade for Geno Smith, but I got Austin Eckler, Miles Sanders, George Kittle. This is a team that's got some guys that are going to help me win, and it would take a real catastrophe for me to lose. But I need some young guys, right? So I had the 111 in this draft. I traded for it, and I wound up getting Will Levis. I don't need him to start, but I needed him. But then, I'm looking, and I'm blaming the Podfather for this one, by the way. I'm blaming the Podfather, and I'm going to blame Theo if this does not work out. But we're at the 204, and Roshan Johnson's there. And I've become, thanks to Theo, thanks to the Podfather, I've become very much a Roshan Johnson guy.
Roshan Johnson.
Oh, Roshan. So I traded what should be a late 24 first, and I got the 204 and the 303. And I was like very happy to do it. So I drafted Roshan Johnson, who, again, this team needs youth. I'm hoping that the back end of the season on a contender, he can contribute to my team this year. And then when the 303 got on the clock, I had another GM offer me a 24 third and John Mechie for the 303. Couldn't hit accept on that fast enough in this league. It's a start 3 wide receiver format. I'm a big Mechie guy, but I used my 24 first in the range that should be worst case scenario 108, 109. And if everything goes well, it'll be the 112 to get two guys that I think will not only help me now, but guys that I'll think that will be helping me in 2 and 3 years and hopefully keep this thing going. But that's like a contenders version. I have some more. If you have anything to add
on, I can. No, I mean, I love what you're saying about this because I think now is the time where the Dynasty community would see a trade like that and go, that's not what you do. Why would you trade a 24 first who has Drake May in the class, who has Caleb Williams in the class, Marvin Harrison Jr. in the class for Roschon Johnson and John Mechie? Why would you do that? And I'm of the mindset that sometimes, like you said this earlier in the show, sometimes you got to show the league who daddy is. You got to show up and you got to show the league who Papa is. And you're trying to win now and you're trying to set your team up later. And sometimes that means throwing some big capital on the table, some big dollar bills to get the players you want to help you win. And one thing that never gets brought up, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this when it comes to trading future picks, time. Time is rarely brought up, but you can go get yourself. If catastrophe ensues, your league underperforms, your team is crap in ways you never thought imaginable, you have enough time to go get 2024 firsts. So trading it now, it doesn't devalue a 24 first, but it definitely suppresses it to the point where it literally does nothing for your chances of winning now, where Roschon and John Mechie could be intricate, like they could be massive parts to this championship run. So it's worth it now. It makes more sense now, where if you go put this into a calculator, it might not come in. If you go to the trade analyzer and play a profiler, it may not look in favor of you, but you know your team. You sat down in January, you put out the goals, you laid out exactly what this team needs to continue to win, and then you go out and do that. So I think that's a great point when we're talking about dynasty theory is you don't always have to follow what the community is saying in terms of evaluating assets. You know your team and your league better than I do, better than Memphis does, better than anyone does. So if you know this is going to be the missing pieces, who cares if you're overpaying? Get your guys. You got enough time to hedge your bets later on if you find that to be the case. So I love what you're talking about here for contenders. Do you have anything you want to talk about for non-contenders, productive rebuilds, the guys who are not looking to win in 2023?
I do, and then I'm going to throw in a bonus strategy at the end. So for non-contenders, this is where you can use resources like the Game Plan podcast with my boy Matty, First Class Fantasy with Theo and Billy. By the way, another little
Dynasty Warzone.
I appreciate that, but like here's a little hack. Best ball guys like Theo, like Billy, they're giving you the keys to the car. They're giving you the answers to the test. They're telling you in January and February, these guys are playing high stakes. You know what high stakes means? A lot of money. They're playing high stakes best ball in February, which means they've already got projections on who's going to be good. I do a little cross-referencing. Hey, he's going to be good this year, at least according to these guys that I trust and value their opinion.
Yep.
Their dynasty value is low. I'm going to go get them. And then when Theo and Billy are right, because inevitably that's what Theo and Billy do, they get it right. And then when they're right, I can then move that player later for a profit, or I can continue to build my team around him. But for the non-contenders, that's why you hang out to all the player profiler shows. And this is going to sound counterintuitive, but let's use this year's class on a Superflex as an example. So let's say you're the GM who did a productive struggle and you had like 101, Bijan, you nailed it. 103, Bryce Young, hey, great job. You got to be safe there. But maybe you're sitting on a 108. And a 109 because you've got because you're in a league, right, where someone's got 3 or 4 firsts and they're rebuilding. Well, you've got some good pieces to build around, but in this class, because you've listened to all these shows, around 108, this class gets super dicey.
Yes,
it gets really for me after 107 because that's Jordan Addison, that's the line of demarcation.
Yes,
man, there's a whole tier for me from 108 to 208 that those guys are very much interchangeable. Start shopping that pick. Hey, can I move back from 108 to like 203 or 204 and get that person's 2024 first? Because you're going to wind up in a tier. You're going to wind up at 203, maybe getting Kendre Miller, maybe getting Marvin Mims, who I got news for you, is no more or less likely to hit than Quentin Johnston or anyone else in that range. So, but what you're doing is you're still going to add another guy at 203, but you're getting more of that future capital. You're adding on because you know from listening to us, hey, you know what? Zay Flowers, okay, fine. Maybe he's the guy in Baltimore. Maybe not. But why wouldn't I give up that 108? Because there's always an eager beaver that wants to move up. Maybe he's a Ravens fan, or maybe he's a Justin Herbert GM, and he wants to get that stack with Quentin Johnson. Hey, I'm happy to help you. And then you're moving into another wide receiver or running back that's really no more or less risky, but you're just adding that extra draft capital. So you're still getting the same amount of rookies, but you're also adding to your first.
Yeah, and if you have a tier of 5 guys, sometimes taking the decision out of your hands can be masterful. I always have this example. The 2017 rookie class was one of the most stacked running back classes, if not the most stacked running back class.
Oh, it's not if. It's the best.
It's the best running back class that we will ever see in the history of pigskin gridiron football. And one of the guys in my league had the 108, I want to say, and he was not happy with having that. He kept trying to move up, because if you remember, Corey Davis was also a big-time prospect that year, and he was kind of going in that 104, 105 range. So all the running backs went bam, 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 and then he was looking to get into 105 so he could get Kareem Hunt, could not get him. So everyone's gone off the board. He ends up staying put. He wants Deontay Foreman. Deontay Foreman gets sniped. Guess who he ends up with? Alvin freaking Kamara. And
never heard of him. I'm kidding.
And he ends up cleaning up. So sometimes removing that decision can work in spades. So if you got the 108 and you want to move back and get an additional asset and get the last guy in your tier, do it. I mean, get those extra bonus assets because you're going to use them. And all of a sudden, you might be looking at a team, and I'd love to get your thoughts here in terms of your productive rebuilds, if you like to pivot or if you stay the course, because you might be sitting there in week 7 and just the stars aligned. You had some weak opponents. You had some, guys you were playing against had their quarterback hurt in the first quarter. And you're looking at this, and you're like, damn, I'm 7 weeks in and I'm 5-2. I wasn't expecting to be here. So if you're halfway through the season, are you likely to pivot and then start selling those assets, or do you like to stay the course with your productive rebuilds?
No, I mean, I'm here to make money. I don't know about you, but it's fun to
and
play.
Win. We want to win.
It's more fun to win. And if you're ahead of schedule, I will do that. But I will say this: I like to wait until, if your league has a trade deadline. Your league has a trade deadline, I'm making those deals right at the trade deadline, but I'm also going to be happy to walk away from a bad deal. I'm not going to make a bad deal just because I'm contending unexpectedly, and I'm going to overpay for a Christian McCaffrey or a Saquon Barkley. Actually, I'm going to take that and I'm going to do one step less. I'm going to take the guys that are playing well that aren't that expensive. Like last year, you could have got Jamal Williams for a late second. That's the perfect guy you could have added. Not going to break the bank, going to help you win. And we saw what that guy was doing. You're still protecting your future assets, but you're shopping in the bargain bin. And there's nothing wrong with that, because it's fleeting, right? You could make the playoffs. You could, win a 1-round matchup. You just gave up, all that precious draft capital you saved up for an aged veteran to make a bad run. Mm-hmm. I'm all for adding points to your roster, if you're unexpectedly contending. But do so on the cheap, man. Go through, and if you're gonna pay premium, I want a premium back. Yeah, if I'm gonna pay, 2 firsts and a project player, then I better be getting Breece Hall. I better be getting a Garrett Wilson. I better be getting a guy. Why did I say 2 Jets? That just feels dirty automatically.
Someone in the chat just said they were a Jets fan. It must have been fresh.
Yeah, I know, but that feels dirty. But if I'm moving major capital, I better be getting good and young at the same time. But I do have one more acquisition strategy for you.
Of course.
And it's a shameless plug, so here goes. So one thing that I love doing. So you're familiar with Alan Slazlowski from the Sonic Truth, as well as RotoWire. He and I did a show on RotoWire, but he created this thought that I did in research for his show. I like to go depth chart dumpster diving. I recently did a podcast on this with veterans. It's like people don't think about it, but right now, Kyle Phillips, the slot receiver with the Titans, that guy's free. And he's good. You know who else no one's talking about?
Who?
Keontae Ingram. He is literally going into year 7, James Conner away from real relevance this year. And no one's talking about him. Jerome Ford, the Podfather, and I had a conversation about Jerome Ford. And I like Jerome Ford, but he's not a pass catcher. He's caught 10 passes between his time at Alabama and today. But you know what? Demetric Felton, who's on that roster, he's listed as the
Yes.
third stringer. That guy caught 55 balls in one season in college, and in his first year, I think he had some injuries last year, but his first year as a pro, he caught 18 of 21 targets. There's your pass catching back, and we've seen Cleveland is moving toward more of a pass
Yes, they
friendly
are.
offense.
Oh, yeah.
Why aren't we out? Like, I'm in 2 industry leagues where Demetric Felton is on the waiver wire. Guys, waiver wire dumpster diving, because then if I'm that contender and I drafted well, and we're going to do a 2-parter this coming Sunday night at 9 p.m. on this very Player Profiler YouTube channel. We're going to do the rookie version. We're going to give you guys 6, 8, 9 rookies of guys that are like an eyelash away just by going to our lads and looking at the depth chart. But then when you hit on some of those guys, you hit on some of these rookies, or you find those treasures, those are the ones that if you're a contender, that's going to insulate your roster from injury as the season moves on.
Right.
If you're not a contender, these are the guys you flip midway through to contenders. You paid nothing. So if you got him off the waiver wire, you got him in the 5th round, don't be greedy. Some of the best gambling advice I ever got was from an older guy I played blackjack with. He's like, sometimes you got to walk away. He's like, you can't win the table. They will not let you take it home with you. Sometimes you got to be happy with your profit and move on. And that's the way you got to do. So this year in your rookie draft or your waiver wire, if you use this theory of depth chart dumpster diving and you hit on 2 or 3 of these guys, that's where there's some good profit to be made. And that first you gave away during your rookie draft, that's where you flip a guy like James Robinson. And I know that's a one-off miracle story.
Yeah.
But maybe this year it's Isaiah Pacheco, that guy that you got for nothing and you need to recoup that first. There's your guy. That's how you turn. That's how you constantly move and stay nimble in an ever-changing market, which is Dynasty.
I love 2 things what you're saying here. First, that you played blackjack with Kenny Rodgers, because clearly that's who that was. Knowing when to fold him, right? That's his
beautiful hair, by the way. Beautiful, even at that advanced age, is a beautiful head of hair.
Great head of hair. But we talked before the show that we were both baseball guys, so we follow baseball, and a lot of these techniques, a lot of this dynasty theory, I think we kind of both learned it through baseball, because the GMs in baseball, they play way more like dynasty fantasy sports than any other league, because they're wheeling and dealing. And a term you used earlier, like, we don't want to mortgage the farm even when we're winning if we weren't sure we're going to win. We want to go get bargain bin players. We want to go get guys off the scrap heap, go dumpster diving throughout depth charts, looking for the Kyle Phillips. Another one might be Mac Hollins. Mac Hollins is in line to be the 2nd wide receiver in Atlanta. And if they do turn it up a notch, we've seen Mac Hollins have productive weeks on less than productive offenses as recently as last year. So you go dumpster diving, but you don't want to mortgage the farm. I love all these things. And I love how you broke it down to 3 concise different parts here. Contenders, productive rebuilds, or non-contenders, and then just overall everybody. Because now I think regardless of what you've decided when you've had your team meeting, you now have a couple of tips to go for. But now I want to talk about a little bit more. So we've talked about the general dynasty theory. We've talked about some of your personal secrets in building your teams. But now I'd like your big picture golden rule for trading in dynasty football.
It should be your number 1 goal anytime you're doing anything of importance to you, whether that's being a husband, a wife, a father, an employee. What's the goal of this? If you're putting significant time and action that has value, what is the goal of this trade? Because right now, I am watching a lot of my league mates making trades just for the sake of making trades. Because what I do is when I see, and then I try to capitalize on that. Hey, I see this guy's just making dumb trades, and I'll say, and I'll just ask him, hey, is there anything on my roster that interests you? And then I start looking at their roster and think, what can I pick off? Is this guy going for picks? Cool. Hey, you know what? I got the 209. What are you doing with Miles Sanders there in Carolina? Doesn't really seem to, I'm looking to pick off value. But when I make a trade, I have a goal in mind. And I've been labeled by some of my league mates. It was like earlier this offseason, after that conversation, I see our friend Harry Snowman in the YouTube chat talking about Jerome Ford. He's a Jerome Ford guy. Yeah, after that conversation with the Podfather, I started going out and making some of these offers, and now I'm doing it on guys like Keon. The other day, I went in like a big money league. It's like one of my bigger money leagues. I'm in it with Theo, and Theo knows me well enough to know, and I'm looking at, like, he's got Keontae Ingram. and I don't even send it to him. I don't even want to tip my hand that I'm looking at Keontae Ingram. I just try to go, what's my goal? Does this trade align with my current goal? And am I at least in the realm of getting a fair return? Again, have a goal. What do we? Because if you go to the gym without a goal, you're just wasting an hour.
Right.
If you want to get promoted at work and you just want to get promoted, but you don't have a goal because you haven't had that conversation with your supervisor, then you're not going to get there. Have a goal, have a plan. Here's what I want to come out of this trade with. And I'll tell you a great little trade. Now, we talked about baseball. I love baseball. My son plays baseball. I was actually a much better wrestler. And one of the things about wrestling is if you ever tied up with somebody, when you push into them, they want to push back. So sometimes I'll just throw out a bad trade, not bad, like so bad that it offends them, to like get them off the scent of what I'm actually looking for. And then I'll come back over the top. Well, hey, I noticed, okay, you don't want to move, you don't want to move Kenneth Walker in light of the Zach Charbonnet news. Cool.
Right.
Hey, what about Keontae Ingram? I'm just trying to add a little running back depth. Because if you go straight in, you go straight in for it and say, hey, Keontae Ingram, because with me, I always get what are you up to? What do you know that I don't know?
Every time, yes.
And then I've tipped my hand. I like to go back to a poker analogy. I've let them know what I'm on to. But if I make them a too low, not low ball, again, never try to offend anybody. But if I give them a lower than expected offer and say, look, dog, I'm just trying to get some RB depth here. Hey, what about this guy? Hey, we're in the middle of the rookie draft. Hey, would you take 301 for Keontae Ingram? Well, sure they will, because they want to make that rookie pick.
Exactly.
So that's where, like, again, with the wrestling, you lean into them, and when they lean back, you just pull them. They're pushing for you, so you just pull them, and all that momentum carries you over to where you want to be. And that's kind of some of the things that I do with trades. And one last thing.
Of course.
I never mind losing a trade because I win a lot of leagues. I've had many a trade go, hey, oh man, the league's like, oh man, you lost that trade. And I'm like, who won the league last year?
There it is.
Side eye with the who won the league. I want all of my league mates to put me on blast. Don't redact my name on Twitter. I am always happy to lose a trade because I always seem to be winning or in the mix to win leagues.
That's, you cannot be afraid to slightly overpay to get the goal. Sometimes in fantasy football analysis, we lose track of how hard it is to win even your home leagues. It's not easy to win. So if you can get yourself a championship, it's okay to overpay. That's what I always tell myself. It's okay to slightly overpay if it matters in terms of winning the entire thing. Now, Memphis, are you a fan of, or have you watched any Quentin Tarantino movies?
Yeah. I've
watched
seen
Django?
It's the one that I've not made it all the way through. Now,
Yes.
Hateful Eight's great, but I'm very familiar with Django.
So there's a scene in Django where they're going to save Jamie Foxx's wife, and he's talking with the dentist. And he says, we got to go get her. He's like, we can't just go get her. They know they'll be like, what are you doing if you're coming to just get her? So we have to go and try to get something bigger and then just come away with your wife and we'll save her. And I use that concept in fantasy, and you kind of touched upon on how you do it. So this is kind of how I do a similar method where if he has Keontae Ingram and I want him, I will make an offer for Kenneth Walker and Keontae Ingram. And I'll make sure it's not a low ball offer, but I'm not looking to overpay. So it's going to be at that 80% threshold. So if he says yes, I'm like, okay, I got Kenneth Walker. And if he says no, I say the same thing. Okay, fine. Seems like Kenneth Walker's your guy. What's it going to take for just getting Keontae? And more often than not, exactly what you say. They go, well, I see you got that 3-1. Let's make that trade. And the entire time, all I wanted to do was trade that 301 to get Keontae Ingram. But when you go to someone...
It's what make magic. It's what make magic work. It's sleight of hand. It's distraction. It's illusion.
Yes. Look this way. I'm coming this way. Because especially if you do content, I do content. People in your leagues can literally hear what you're saying. And I'm about the fantasy life. When I come here and talk on Trade Gods or the gameplay and I talk about a player I'm looking for, odds are I'm in an active negotiation for that player. If I'm looking to sell, he has probably been placed on my trade block in my league. So I am talking about what I'm doing. And there's a lot of times you go, well, I guess I'm not trading you Keontae Ingram after you had that great talk with Memphis. And I'm like, oh, well, That sucks. So then I have to get crazy with it, get crafty with it. And that's a couple ways that we like to do it. Little sleight of hand. Look for someone else you maybe slightly underpay, and then you come away with the player that you wanted the entire time. Great talk. I mean, just hearing you say that, like, yes, I do this all the time. I love this move. It's the old bait and switch. It's a great move. And the bait and switch, that's our tactic. Are there any other real life business concepts that you use in fantasy football? And feel free to dive into all of them, because I'm loving this conversation and I want to hear everything you have, because so far it seems like we're very similar gamers, and I'm definitely going to get a few things that I can add to my tool belt and use on some of my sucker league mates right after this show's over.
Well, I've got two for you. One is it's the efficient markets hypothesis, and I'll just read the boring dictionary, or I guess the Investopedia definition. And the efficient markets hypothesis states that the market price for shares, i.e., players that we're using, so I'll say it in dynasty terms, the market price for players incorporates all known information about that player. This means that the player is accurately valued until a future event changes that valuation. Because the future is uncertain, injuries, overperformance, etc. Because the future is uncertain, an adherent to the efficient market hypothesis is far better off owning a wide or diverse swath of players and profiting from the general rise of the overall market. You either believe in it and adhere to it passively, to a broad market investing strategies, or you detest it and you focus on only picking players based on growth potential. So what does that mean? So here's the big part for me. Whatever you take away from that, you can throw efficient markets hypothesis in your own Google machine. But the part that sticks out for me is incorporates all known information about a stock or a player for what we do. All known. Now, here's the thing. Sometimes you know, but it's not public knowledge. Like, how soon did you know Aaron Rodgers was going to Green Bay?
What do you mean, going to New York?
Yeah, I'm sorry. So from Green Bay to New York. How soon did January?
Like,
as soon as the season was over?
We knew in February. Yeah, it seemed like we knew right away.
So why did it take so many dynasty gamers to wait until he was actually signed, sealed, and delivered to go move on Garrett Wilson? Because the minute he did, you know what his dynasty value did? It went up. Why did everybody wait until he was officially in New York to go get Jordan Love? We knew he was now Jordan Love is a starting quarterback in the NFL. Sometimes you have to take what's known and what's provable. And I knew Aaron Rodgers was not going to be the quarterback in Green Bay. So based off what I've known, I can go make moves on Jordan Love's. I can go out and maybe try to move off some of that Christian Watson, holdings I had, because I don't think it's going to be quite as voluminous, if that's even a word, quite as voluminous.
It is now, baby.
It is. Oh, I make up words all the time. It's great. But it's not going to be as robust from a pat. I think you're going to see, it's like why AJ Dillon, low-key guy, I'm out, because he's not only is he like going to be more featured, I believe, but I believe that because he was a big sleeper, a big go-to guy last year who underperformed, you're going to get that post-hype sleeper discount.
Yep.
And you're going to get a guy who's in for a big productive role, because Aaron Jones, he's going to take care of Aaron Jones. If he's got even the nagginest of like hamstrings or calves, because he knows he's probably getting cut in the offseason. So that's what I know. I mean, if like your best friend was on and I use a lot of metaphors and analogies, so just bear with me. But if your best friend was in like the real estate game,
right,
and he or she told you that, hey, this neighborhood downtown is going to get completely revitalized. They're going to put all this money into it, and they're going to build up that part of the city. What are you going to go do? Well, now it's not come out in the newspaper yet, but something's going to happen. That property is going to go up in price. So you acted on that incomplete, not solidified information, and you made out like a bandit. That's what you have to do in an efficient market, because when you have the dynasty nerds and you have the fantasy footballers and you have Matthew Berry educating more and more dynasty players, when you really should be a player profiler, but you see we're next level. But as more of your league mates get educated as to what we're doing with dynasty, you need to be able to take it to that next level, because they're always going to keep it very down the middle, very basic. And we're going to help you outperform an educated to a degree fellow owner by using things like the efficient markets hypothesis.
Right. And sometimes you're going to be wrong. You're going to build these narratives. You talked about it earlier when your definition of dynasty theory was putting together paths, narratives, outcomes, and kind of catering your business towards those outcomes. And you're going to be wrong. You're going to say, hey, Aaron Rodgers is going to the Jets, so let me get Garrett Wilson now. Let me get Jordan Love now. Let me get rid of Christian Watson now. And then all of a sudden, boom, bang, boom, he goes to whatever, another team, the Texans, Titans, whatever. And you're like, shit, I was wrong. But it's okay.
Well,
because if you're right a couple times, you're going to cash in enough.
As long as you have like confidence in yourself to be wrong in anything in life, I mean, I was confident that, Trey Lance was going to get traded in the draft. He didn't. He hasn't as of yet. But you know what? More often than not, you know exactly how these scenarios are going to play out. But I have one last one for you before we move to anything else. And I love this one because it's not used enough in dynasty space. And it's the greater fool theory. And the greater fool theory proposes that you can profit from investing as long as there is a greater fool than yourself to buy the investment at a higher price. This means that you could make money from an overpaid stock or player as long as someone else is willing to pay more than you pay for it. Now, eventually you run out of fools and the market for any investment or player becomes too hot.
Yeah.
But like this year, I think this is the last year that you'll ever get the king's ransom for Justin Jefferson. He's the 101 in redraft. Now the one thing that he's got going for him, maybe he's a bad analogy, but like, I don't know. That would be that running back right at the age apex, that wide receiver, right? Terry McLaurin comes to mind, and that super bums me out because I love Terry McLaurin.
Yeah.
But like last year was the last year you could pay market for Terry McLaurin because every year after it's going to start going down. But that's what it is. You can, if you say to yourself, hey, I'm going to go trade for whatever player, and I'm going to pay this. I know I can get out of it because the market's going to stay hot enough that I'm going to get out of this, Christian McCaffrey, whatever it is. I can get out of it because someone's going to be willing to pay more. The difference is between what we're doing and like the finance analogy is that injury, especially at the running back position, can really blow up in your face. So be very careful about paying market for players near the age apex. Player Profiler, the Breakout Finder, the Dynasty Dominator, they do such a good job of identifying that player's apex value in Dynasty. But just be careful. Like last year, if you'd have paid market after like week 4 for Breece Hall, like maybe it was 2 firsts or whatever it was, I'm theorizing here. But if you'd have paid that, you didn't get hurt because he's only going into year 2. But if you'd have paid that for Christian McCaffrey last season and he tore an ACL, you're never getting 2 firsts back again. Whereas like right now in your rookie draft, you could easily get the 106 and a future first for Breece Hall.
Right.
So you got to say, hey, what am I paying? What am I going to get a year from now? What am I going to get 2 years from now? And just how do you, so that's just another one that I like. Cause I also like the term greater fool theory. As long as you can find a bigger fool than yourself.
The greater fool theory is the best thing that's been brought up on the game plan, probably in the history of the show. And I would know that because I've been here for every single episode. So Memphis, so I thank you for that. And I do use this theory without even really knowing it. And what I do in my leagues, and it goes back to the point that we started this whole show with, being flexible and knowing your league. If I see a player available in my in my league, especially my home leagues where I know everybody, and a certain player hits the trade block, and I know this team manager loves this player. He's been a fan of this player. Maybe he rostered him a year ago, 2 years ago, whatever. And the price is right. Even if I don't need that guy, I will buy then so that I could possibly flip at a higher price to that fool in the league, because you know that they will always love that player. Like for me, I am a DJ Moore believer to the day I die. I do not roster him in my home league. And I know that if he has a good season, that player, that owner will come to me and try to oversell DJ Moore. I'm going to have to, I'm gonna have to remember this because our man John in the chat says, "What if you cannot spot the guy? That means you're the guy, my friend. If you don't know who the fool is in your league, look at the mirror because it's probably you." So that could be me with DJ Moore if I don't remember this theory. So I like to do that and just buy players that you know at a certain price so that you can spend it and get something bigger later. So greater fool theory, the best thing that has ever been brought up. Now, Memphis, do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up and send our listeners on their way for this great Saturday afternoon?
No, but this is what we do all the time at the Dynasty Warzone. There's a lot. I mean, not to put the boss over too strong, but the Podfather Matt Kelly and all the guests that he brings on the Mind of Mansion, he does such a great job of identifying great players. Again, if Roshan does or does not work out, he's either going to get the credit or the blame.
Yep.
But so in business and life, you can be the same as, better than, or different than. So when I started listening to Dynasty content years ago, I try to be different than. I try to bring content because, at the end of the day, Matt and I actually agree quite a bit on players for the most part, on players, player value and stuff. But if you're going to be in that content creation, why am I trying to compete with the best? Why am I trying to do that at the level? I'm going to do something different than. And I think that makes the Dynasty Warzone a good companion piece to some of the other Dynasty podcasts you listen to, whether that is the Sonic Truth, whether that is the Mind of Mansion. Anything with Cody Carpentier is special. Matty Kiwoom. I'm not really going to say that too loud, but Matty here is great. He puts out great content in and of his own right. But just hang out, at the Player Profiler YouTube channel, the Player Profiler Megaphone channel. All the podcasts are there.
Oh yeah.
If you like this one, listen to it each and every time. If you don't, just knock it out of your queue. But subscribing, listening. I appreciate John and Harry Snowman and all these beautiful people interacting. That's how you help us. That's all that I ask is in return. Subscribe everywhere, interact with us, and help us grow. That's the only thing I would leave you, because we're going to do our best to help you build winning dynasty rosters, fantasy rosters, in-season rosters, make moves. But that's how you help us. Yeah, it's Harry in the group.
Harry Snowman, he's the man. Rob is the man.
In all caps, smash the like button, guys.
Yes.
I make up words, right? We talked about this. I make up words. It is the freest way to help any content creator. It is free. It's free 99 to go into your YouTube and subscribe. Notifications on or off is up to you, but subscribing helps. Going into the Apple or Spotify and leaving a review helps.
Absolutely.
You have no idea what your thumbs up, what your like, what your subscribe, what your review does for us without ever even having to open your wallet. And if you want to do that, we offer tons of good stuff. It's the FFPC, it's the Dynasty Dominator, it's the all-in package, it's Patreons. We have one, Player Profiler has one. All of these ways are ways you can do it financially, but guys, totally free to help us out. That's all that I would ever ask.
Yes, a great point. I'm glad you brought it home, and I'm super excited and so happy that you came on. But Memphis, before we go, make sure you tell other people listen where they can find you on socials, because you got to check out the Dynasty Warzone. It's such a great podcast. Monday nights, right? Every Monday night it's out.
Well, that's the top secret new podcast that will be a Player Profiler only podcast. That's going to be starting, I think, a week from Monday. We're going to keep that one under wraps. We don't want
the secret one. So I almost blew the secret.
We don't want some ne'er-do-well to come in behind us and snipe our concept, if you will. Sunday nights, right now until the season starts, me and my co-host Jerry Sinclair, we're doing Sunday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern, right here on this YouTube channel. If you want to watch live, cool. If you're like Memphis, I don't really do the whole YouTube thing. Dig it. Subscribe to the Spotify Megaphone, because it's going to be a podcast on Wednesday morning, so you can get it both places. And if you need me, I'm at DWZ, as in Dynasty Warzone, at DWZ Memphis. The show's everywhere at Dynasty Warzone. Hit me on socials. Hit me up. I try to help people when I can. If you want me to help you in a trade, here's the move. The game plan. See what I did there? Ties it all back. Just tag me, not me and 74 of my closest Dynasty analyst friends, just me. Yep. I'll respond, or you can just shoot it to my DMs. I do my level best, but yeah, you can find me anywhere at DWZ Memphis. The show's at DWZ.
Love it. And thank you again for coming on. You can find me on Twitter at Matty Kiwoom. All my stuff comes out playerprofiler.com. Trade Gods each and every Thursday with my man Jason Allwine. I got the executives Patreon with me and Cody, so subscribe there as well. And make sure that you're doing yourself a service by checking out Dynasty Warzone and all the great stuff that we have at Player Profiler. Like and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment about how much you love Memphis and the game plan as a whole. So keep game planning, my friends, and I'll see you next week. Peace.
Hey, you like that video? Be sure to subscribe and activate those alerts so you get notified as soon as new videos drop. And be sure to check out playerprofiler.com. We have all the tools for you to dominate every type of fantasy league. We have a draft kit, Dynasty Deluxe, data analysis, DFS Dominator, and don't forget the player rankings to rule them all.